the more safe spaces that people in blended families have to speak up and say, oh, is this normal? Like, is it okay? Like, how do I get through this? I think the better off we'll all be.
And now.
I'm the captain now.
Coming to you from the K2 studios in San Diego, California.
This sounds great. You sound amazing.
I always sound amazing.
It's the world famous
Everybody's hitting off like BFFs.
Kris and Kristine Show.
Hey, what's happening? How are you doing today? Thank you so much for being here, and I am Kris.
And I'm Kristine, and welcome to episode 157 of the Kris and Kristine Show.
Ah, fantastic. Are you staying dry? Because I am super soaking wet.
Well, we are definitely dripping wet up here in Central California. If I sound a little bit far away as you're listening to this episode, it's because I am a full 333 miles away from home.
I thought it was like 350, but as a crow flies.
Thank you for trying to correct me. No, it's actually 333. I charted it out.
Oh, well, check that out. So how's the weather been up there? Has it been raining like it is down here?
We had a huge windstorm this morning. It woke me up. I was laying in bed here at my parents' house because I've been up here for Ezekiel's birthday. And I was just, resting and had like a full another hour to sleep because, today was a holiday. And then I hear this raging wind outside. I opened up the blinds and I thought that all the trees were going to be like knocked over. It was so windy. It was crazy, but it wasn't raining at that time. So we've had 3 rainstorms today and a lot of wind. And my parents found out they got a call from their neighbor for the cabin that they have up in the mountains. And apparently a big branch broke off of one of their oak trees and fell on the roof. And we're going to go up and check it out tomorrow. Hopefully there's no damage, but there is a chance.
Oh, gosh, that's horrible. I've heard a lot of, you missed all the craziness here in San Diego. Well, let me tell you, it's like end of the world days over here with floods and rivers and power lines down and trees down and images on the social media I keep seeing with all of the San Diego River has gone above and beyond its actual banks.
Oh, wow.
It's risen into the streets, and it's risen so much that there's this image going around where they have there's a spot in Mission Valley where you kind of duck down. If you're going from you go across, I think it's Friars, but you kind of go underneath it. Anyways, there's like a little height sign that says 14 feet, 3 inches or whatever for trucks. The water level is almost touching that sign.
What?
I know.
Wow, that's crazy.
I know. Everything's flooded. I haven't even seen the beaches yet, but I heard the surf's up though. I mean, surfers want to go in the water.
Yeah, well, because on top of all of the rainstorms, so they're calling this an atmospheric river that's hit California. But on top of that, it also is the King's Tide, which is this time of year, happens every couple of years where it's the highest tide of the year. And so it's these monster waves that come in. But that plus a storm surge has just knocked these waves over the seawall, like Pacific Beach. It's like flooding everywhere. It's crazy.
It is pretty crazy. The whole entire coast. I was looking at one of the Doppler radar on my phone or somewhere, and I think green means like rain or something. So the entire map of California was covered in this green blob, covering the entire map. I'm like, oh, well, I guess it's raining everywhere. So, and just a minute ago, I heard it raining outside. Everything is wet and soggy, and it's so miserable, especially when you got the kids here at the house. They're all cooped up inside.
Yeah.
Being that it's a holiday and they're off, trying to find something to do.
Well, so I was watching the news earlier with my parents, not to talk more about weather, but I'm going to talk more about weather. So we were watching the news and they had the weather report from the collective rainfall from the beginning of October all the way until the present day. And Fresno, from October 1st until now, which is, middle of January, they've had 9.5 inches of rain in Fresno, which typically is there's a lot of agriculture, but it's typically pretty desert-like for the most part. And so, California has been in this perpetual drought, but 9.5 inches of rain in Fresno since October.
9.5 inches.
Yeah.
Wow.
Half an inch of rain in the last 24 hours alone.
And I'm just assuming that we're not in a drought anymore, right?
I don't know. I think that we've been in a drought for so many years that I think it's going to take longer than like one good spell of rain to pull us out, but you never know.
I think what they say is that most of the rainfall we do get, nobody collects it. It just gets washed out into the ocean. So we don't really collect it anyways. Even if we have, enough rain to supply us for a full year in one storm, which seems like we just did, most of it's gone out to the ocean. Why can't they just save it or something? I don't know.
Well, that is a deeper political conversation and way above our pay grade.
Politics have nothing to do with that. I'm talking about weather here.
Yeah. They'd have to create like big storage tanks or something like that underground for all the water. And yeah, we just don't have all of that, or, pump it into the pipeline or something. But it's crazy. But it was just downpouring here a little bit ago as we are recording this podcast on Monday night. And definitely stormy. There's a lot of snow up in the mountains and it's getting pretty cold. So, excited to come home on Wednesday, but also a bit nervous because I have to drive over the Grapevine. And that's a place where historically there's really bad mudslides or snow or both. Oh,
gosh, that's right. Have you checked the reports on that stuff? Has anything been blocked?
No, I haven't looked it up lately, but, it's, just that time of year where you just have to be careful with travel and just kind of, cross your fingers and check the weather report before you go and pack blankets and water and extra clothes just in case.
Oh, yeah. Extra, gosh. It kind of reminds me of all those like survival shows that I used to love to watch, but I mean, it sounds cool and all, but when you when you watch it at home in the comfort of your television, you're like, yeah, it's super cool. Yeah, I can do that. Oh, I can make fire to sticks in the cold snow. Oh, I can wrestle a bear to the ground and kill it with a knife and eat it. Make a blanket out of its bare skin. I can do that. Yeah. It sounds good.
Or crawl inside of it and stay warm.
It's just, that too. It's the same kind of guys I would say that are watching football and are screaming at the TV from their couch. You idiot! I could have done that pass. And yet they're sitting there shoving nachos in their face while they're watching the game.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I have to tell you the story, talking about that. It's totally different when you're actually out on the road and then you're stuck in this. So 2 different stories. When I was younger, my parents drove us out to Nevada to go spend, I think it was Thanksgiving with my cousins when they used to live out there. But the way that we had to come back was through the Tahoe, Reno area and through Donner Pass, which, historically Donner Pass is this place where the Donner Party died, and they actually had to
it didn't sound like a fun party to me.
It was they turned to cannibalism to survive.
What?
Yeah, it's this really shady part of California history. Anyway, so because they got stuck in the snow and trapped there, and so that's the Donner Party. But on Donner Pass, what's so crazy is we were driving back from this Thanksgiving holiday in Nevada and got stuck because of the snow in this area of Donner Pass, and there was cars everywhere, and it was hours and hours of being stuck in traffic. And I just remember, my mom always packed snacks and games and things like that, but there were no bathrooms, and we were just holding it for hours and hours and hours and hours. And I just finally remember my mom was like, you know what, Larry, that's my dad, Larry, we're just gonna have to hold up a towel. The girls can't hold it anymore. Everybody in their cars to block us from the headlights of other people. In the car? No, out. We had to get out of the car, and we had to they had to use a towel to block us so we could do your business. That whole concept of don't eat yellow snow, it was because of us.
Oh, or I heard brown snow too. So
well, ew, gross. But a different story is after I had moved down to San Diego, it was my first full year in San Diego. So I'd moved in January, and it was the following November. We knew these rainstorms were coming to Southern California, and my team was it was my weekend to be with Zeke, and they were like, you should get on the road because the rain was coming in. So I got on the road, and I ended up driving through flash floods in downtown LA, and the water was I shouldn't have driven through it because it was almost up to the top of my tires, and it really could have gotten in my engine. But then I kept driving and got stuck on the Grapevine, the last stretch of the Grapevine right behind a mudslide. I was maybe 20 cars back from a mudslide. It had just closed down and blocked the whole freeway and we were stuck there for like 3 hours while they had to like come in with Caltrans and move all of the mud aside. So it's a real crazy time of year.
Oh, I hate weather. Only weather I like is clear, sunny days. I'm talking about like 80 degrees, sunshine, and not a cloud in the sky, but funsy,
No, I like the cold, just not the rain.
Okay, move to Antarctica. You got a place waiting for you up there.
Well,
like the
thank
cold.
you. Me and the penguins.
You
yeah,
and the penguins. They're dressed up for you in their suits. In their
thank you. Their tuxedos.
So other than that, how's your week been?
Well, I wanted to hear first about your week. What's been going on while I've been up here and out of the way?
Oh, my goodness. It has been craziness down here in San Diego, keeping the fort alive. You know what's funny? I should not say too funny, really, is that when I have to watch the kids.
Watch? You mean take care of your own spawn?
Yes.
Watch the kids. Watch
the kids.
You mean when I watch them?
All weekend, all 3 days.
When you have to parent as a single dad.
All 3 days by myself, and they are out of effing control. Man.
What do you mean? What do they do? Ask to be fed?
No, that's not the thing.
And want attention?
I wish it was that easy. Just acting up at the store, just acting up everywhere we go, trying to be shock jock, trying to, the things that Mason does, it just kind of gets out of control where he tries to be he'll do anything crazy things that Jacob does tell him to do. Like, hey, do this thing really quick, and they're playing catch in the store with the balls that are for sale, stuff like that. They're being loud, obnoxious at the restaurants.
Crack the whip. Crack the whip. They don't do that with me. I mean, they do a little bit, but that's why they don't like me, is because I'm very strict on them. Because if you give a mouse a cookie, if you give them an inch, they're going to take a mile. Just don't do it. Just lock it down.
Oh, I know. It's just been like that going on. And of course, with this weather too, it's hard to get them to go outside and ride bikes or do the normal stuff they would be doing. They can't do that because it's been pouring like cats and dogs out here. So they've been cooped up inside playing games and doing whatever.
But let's be real about that, because when they do want to go outside, they'll want to go into the backyard and play football. And you say, don't go play on the grass. It's all muddy and you're going to get dirty. So literally they do want to go outside and get muddy and dirty, but you don't want them tracking anything in the house. So really, you can't have it both ways, dude.
So speaking of being muddy and stuff, I took all of their shoes and threw it into the sink in the laundry room because they were all just covered in mud and muck and everywhere. There was literally there's a Foot Locker's worth of shoes they left outside there, and I put them all in the thing in the sink, and then because they're full of water, right? So they had to run the water out. So plus clothing too. Plus today, Jacob comes inside after I don't know what happened, but he was covered in mud, all over his pants, all over his shirt. He did a slide or something because they were playing outside in the rain for a little bit until it started getting more rain coming in.
Yeah.
Because Mason is into baseball now, so he starts Little League coming up here soon, and he wanted me to get him some baseball gear, so I got him a batting tee. When you put the little ball on it, you hit the ball off the thing. So he had those practice wiffle balls he was playing with out in the backyard with the thing until it started getting raining, and both kids were having a blast hitting the ball off the tee out to the hill or wherever they're hitting it to. And then it started raining, and they left all the toys out there and all their stuff out there. And
but they came in muddy?
Well, Jacob did. I don't know how they got the mud on him. I told him, Jacob, go upstairs. Here's a plastic bag. Put all of your muddy clothes in this plastic bag, and we'll take care of it. You
let him walk upstairs in muddy clothes, Christopher?
Well, I told him not to, but
But then you handed him a bag and told him to.
I said, please just put everything in here very carefully. Don't get mud everywhere. Just put it all in this bag.
Just hose him down. Just make him strip down and hose him down. Let him freeze. Throw him a towel outside. That's what I would have done.
That's great parenting advice from Kristine. You've heard it here first. The cold, freezing rain with snow and ice. Hose him down.
Did you survive Mudpocalypse 2023?
I'm working on it, but I have not survived Clover apocalypse.
What? What's going on with Clover?
She's leaving little Tootsie Rolls on the carpet again.
What?
I let her outside for 5 minutes today. I'm like, I set her down for a little bit. I go do something else. I check out her. I'm like, where are you at, Clover? And then I go in there. I see your little presence on the carpet for me. And I'm like, Clover. And then I look at her and I have a little conversation with her. I tell her, go sit down. She goes on the couch, sits down. And I'm like totally looking at her. I'm telling her, look, Clover, no pooping on the carpet. And she looks at me like, uh-huh. I said, no, pooping is in here in your playpen. We gave you a little bark potty. That's where you go poop, right? She looks at me like, uh-huh.
Too many words saying the P word. No more.
And she's like, I'm so cute, right? And she's the whole like laying on her back, like, I'm cute, right?
And she's like, my mommy's gone. There are no rules.
Yes, I think that's what happens around here when the kids are gone and you're gone, everybody else is gone. It's like chaos.
But that's the thing is, you and I have talked about this before, is that, when you're home with your boys, you're not watching them. You are their parent, their biological parent. So, honey, you gotta not act like you're just babysitting them and they're like misbehaved kids that you're babysitting and you can't wait for their parents to get home to hand them back over. You are their parent.
Actually, I can't wait till school starts tomorrow morning. It's going to be so much fun. I can't wait. It's just like the first time in history of life where I'm actually going to get super excited about taking the kids to school.
It was one day. Oh, my word.
I'm like, yes. Tomorrow can't come soon enough. I'm giddy.
See what I deal with, everybody. This is why I'm like, I need sanity. I need to go do weddings on the weekend.
I need to do weddings on the weekends.
Well, I'm sorry that you've had a rough weekend up there. I, on the other hand, have had a fantastic weekend. I am here up in Kingsburg where my family is because it is Ezekiel's birthday week. It's also Jacob's birthday week. I mean, we have boys that have birthdays one day apart, which I think is so bonkers, isn't it?
That's crazy. I mean, think of the odds on that,
Right.
I mean, imagine if they were the exact same age. That'd be really trippy. That'd be too much.
That would be so crazy. It'll be like they were twins. But
it would be, yeah.
But I came up here on Friday, late evening. I left just after work and got on the road, and it took a long time to get up here. But I've been spending time with my family. I threw Zeke a birthday party last night. Actually, we threw the birthday party, you and me. You just weren't able to be here. We hosted a dinner. Yeah, thank you. So hosted a dinner. I asked Ezekiel what he wanted to do, and I feel very fortunate because it's like, he's turning 18. He's becoming an adult. And when I asked him what he wanted to do for his birthday party, and I just left it wide open, like, do you want to have a party with friends? Do you want to do this, do that? He really, like, the first people that he listed that he wanted is all of his family, like my side of the family, because he's so close with them. And like, it warmed my heart that those were the first people that he thought of that he wanted to celebrate his birthday with. And so he had some friends come too, but, he picked this steak place that I used to take him. His dad and I used to take him a lot when he was growing up. And so it was great. They got some decorations. I put them up, some balloons. I made him a cake. He wanted this. He calls him Sean O'Malley. Sugar Sean O'Malley is what he calls him. He had this one image that he really wanted to have on his cake. And so I had to do my research, like, how can I get an edible image printed while I'm in San Diego, but have it ready when I get up to Fresno? And did I just want somebody to make his cake, but I couldn't find somebody to make his cake. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to make it. And so fortunately, there's a cake place called Creative Cakes and More here in Fresno. And they do the printing of the edible images and sell everything that I needed to make Zeke's cake. So I got all of that on Saturday and made his cake. My mom and I made his cake. And then on Sunday, we had all of our family go out to dinner and it was really fun. And then I had Zeke today and went and bought him some new slacks and took him to lunch for tri-tip. And, he was just so grateful for his birthday party. We had such a good time and he just kept telling me what a great time it was. But he was most excited about his birthday present.
Oh, what was that?
Well, his birthday present is he really, because he's turning 18, he wants to go to an 18 and over comedy club in Vegas. And there's this comedian he really, really likes that he watches on YouTube who is going to be in Vegas. And so I surprised him and told him that in June, so right after his graduation, that I'm going to take him on a Mom and Bubba, I call him Bubba, so a Mama Bubba trip to Vegas, and we're going to go to a couple of restaurants he's been wanting to go to, and we're going to go to this comedy club so that he can go and hear this comedian. And so I thought maybe he'd be a little bit excited out of it, but it just made me feel so good that out of everything that he got for his birthday, he's super excited about going to Las Vegas because, he's been asking us for months to take him to go to the Dick's Last Resort restaurant, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so we're going to go there, and then I'm going to take him to this comedy show, and he's just over the moon. And, I love that because quality time is my love language and he wants to spend time with me. He's really excited that the two of us are going together. And I'm just really excited to be able to spend time with him. And I just can't believe that my kid is 18.
Fantastic. I can't believe it either. You got an 18-year-old. I got a 13-year-old over here.
I know.
Wow.
Yeah, because we have Jacob. So I'm coming home on Wednesday, and then we are prepping to have Jacob's birthday party this coming up Sunday. So we had one birthday party this Sunday, another one next Sunday. I never thought it was going to be crazy like this in January when we first started dating.
Well, I did because I know that with kids and birthdays and blending families and all this stuff going on, it can get quite crazy, Yeah,
what it is it's just like we've tried to learn how you have certain traditions with your boys and I have traditions, and then trying to figure out how each kid's day is able to be special. I know there's been a couple birthdays where we even combined them together into one big celebration, and it's just been a lot of learning as we've been bringing our family together, hasn't it?
Absolutely. And this week, our VIP guest is a specialist when it comes to taking care of blended families and being a bonus mom, as I like to call it, right, Kristine?
Yeah, absolutely. And she's going to share some great words of wisdom, and we're going to talk with her about what the journey has been with our own blended family, and she's coming up with us right after this.
Enjoy listening to podcasts and ever wonder, can I make a podcast? But it seems so complicated, and good audio production can take time. What if there was a way to create an amazing podcast easily? Well, now there is. Introducing Podcasting Made Easy from Podtastic Audio. My production team will handle your entire audio production, allowing you to be the star of your show. This is Podcasting Made Easy. How easy? Well, so easy, you don't even have to press record. Now that's easy. Your listeners are waiting. Let's deliver. Sign up for a free strategy call today at podtasticaudio.com/easy.
And welcome back, everybody. Today we have another fantastic VIP guest. She is a certified life coach focusing on blended families. Welcome to the show, Amy Stone.
That's so fun. Thank you guys so much for having me today.
Hey, Amy. Well, thank you for stopping by. Where in the world are you joining us today?
I am, I think, completely on the other side of the country from you guys. I am in sunny Miami, Florida. We are having a cold snap today, and it is 66 degrees.
Oh my goodness. We heard that there was like some snow flurries just
true?
A couple weeks ago in Miami area.
Probably not in Miami. Maybe in because we got this long, skinny state. And so maybe in northern Florida. Oh, you know what you might have heard? There was some confusion because we were having a cold snap and they did fake snow at one of our NFL games.
I saw that. That wasn't
and
real?
People got confused. It wasn't real. It wasn't real. It was just like a thing, but it was confusing and people were like, was there snow? Like, it was only 50 degrees. It was no snow.
That's so funny. Yes, you're right. Because I was watching the news and it was they were coming out of an NFL game and they were like, it's so cold. It's snowing in Florida. It's snowing in Miami. And I was like, there is no way. And I told our boys, because we just went to Miami on summer vacation this past summer. They're like, no, that's so crazy. It gets so hot in Florida. That's weird.
It would be crazy. It would be really, really crazy.
Well, how do you handle the Miami heat, as it were?
But I think of it, you guys you're in San Diego, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so you don't have a huge seasonal flux, but it's kind of like winter for us in the heat of the summer. You either go away, so it's summer, so a lot of people do travel and go north and avoid the whole thing. And then the rest of us kind of stay inside unless you're doing an outdoor kind of activity. So unless you're in the water or paddleboarding or doing something where you're not at the mercy of it. It is miserable here in July and August and September.
That's
very
when
hot.
we went. It was July.
Yeah. Very hot, very humid, very sticky.
Oh,
Yeah.
it kicked my butt. I almost fainted. I saw on the weather on my phone, like, 90 degrees. I can handle that. No problem. Then it was like 100 and whatever % humidity. I don't even know.
Right.
Well,
yeah.
Okay, the story goes like this, Amy. You're going to appreciate this being from the Miami area. Is we went out to one of the gator parks and we did the little the airboat experience. But then afterwards, Kris had his GoPro and he wanted to walk around and he wanted to take video of everything. And I'd asked him if he wanted to get a water bottle and he was like, I'll just be fine. Well, they have those wooden plank walkways that seem to go on and on forever, and you never quite know which way to go to get back to the front. Well, he ended up getting lost on the wooden plank walkway in the Everglades. No. And then there was like very little cell signal. So I get this panicked 911 text from him that he's like on the verge of passing out. And we have all 3 boys that I'm wrangling, and it's 95 degrees and a typical, very humid Florida, Miami day. So that was Kris's first full day in Miami.
Oh, it kicked my butt.
That's rough. It's good, though. I always tell people to go do the gator experience because that's a true thing. Did you guys see, though, alligator? Because we see them in the winter when they're coming up out of the cold water. Oh. So did you guys see a lot during the summer, or were they down deep?
Well, we did see like the guy in the little boat says, look, there's an alligator. It looks like a rock
Yes.
or a branch or something. No, it's an alligator right there. And there it go. Oh, okay. Well, that's about all we really saw. They did have one in like a little like zoo exhibit thing. And the keeper came in and they did the full on like, watch it do it, eat this food, or watch it do this thing, or, that kind of stuff, like for tricks really more than anything else.
Yeah.
But I was walking over one of the little bridges they had, and I just looked down in the water, and there was a baby. I mean, no more than maybe 8 inches long.
Did you get a picture of it?
Yeah, I do have a photo. So it was like very young. And I did get to see that little one, but I wasn't about to get any closer because you never know if there's a mama nearby.
I was going to say that's when we don't go anywhere near it, because that's where the mama should be nearby. But
right.
If you ever come back in the winter, you can go out to this place. It's bizarrely called Shark Valley. There's no sharks. I have no idea why they call it Shark Valley. But and there's a concrete path that they made. It's 14 miles and there's a tram, and halfway down is an observation tower. And because of the concrete path, it's asphalt. And so in January, February, December, now it's still not very cold, but when it gets cold, the alligators all come up on the path to warm up. And so sometimes you can go out there on the tram and see, we used to take the kids out there, and you can see 100, 125 as you go around.
Oh my word.
Because they're all over it's a very cool, I recommend that for everybody. It's a park, a state park or a national park. It's part of Everglades National Park, and it's called Shark Valley. So you just go in, you pay your park fee. You can walk, you can ride your bike, but there's also a motorized tram that goes around and takes people and sees it. And at the end, you can climb the tower and look all over the Everglades and see that there's really nothing there. It is a sea of grass and water.
Well, I was going to say, walking out to the observation tower, considering you might run into 100 or 125 gators, is not a great idea.
After living in Florida for 25 years, it is something that I understand. They're really very docile. The black Florida, that's the Cayman gator. And it's really very docile. It's not going to go after an adult. And so now I might be, not as nervous as I was 25 years ago. But when we used to start to go, I wouldn't stop. We would take our bikes out there and I would not stop. My husband's like, there's a gator. I'm like, I believe you. I believe you. Moving on.
Now, Amy, is it true about what they say about water? If there could be gators in every body of water you see?
That is what they say. I have not tested it. I believe them.
So there's lots of water. We're in Florida. There's a creek everywhere. There's all kinds of water. Every single off ramp had a puddle of water everywhere. And I'm thinking, there's got to be kids don't go swimming, by the way. It's got to be alligators in those things. It was more like the kids and I are looking at every out the car window, looking
you
at all.
You kept going. You're like, there's probably 20 in that one.
Yes.
Yeah. No. I mean, that is what they say, and so I have never tested it, and I don't plan to.
Well, that's, I think, a good idea. But have you lived in Miami your entire life, or are you a transplant to Florida?
I'm a transplant. There's people usually say this in regards to Texas, but I always tell people, I'm like, I got here as soon as I could. So I moved here when I was just after college. I moved here. So I've been here all of my adult life. And a few years ago, 5, 6, 7 years ago, I finally decided, since I'd lived here more than any place else, I came to the conclusion, I was like, I can't really call any place else my hometown. This is my hometown now.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Now, Kris is officially from the San Diego area.
That's right.
But I'm a transplant.
Born and bred and never left. So
there you go.
But I've been here for about 7 years. So now I'm starting to say that, I'm from San Diego. I don't know if that's very truthful. Maybe I need to get another 20 years under my belt, but I think we're pretty close to saying that this is my hometown now, right, Kris?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, but San Diego is such a transplant city that people
same with Miami.
Yeah, people come in here in their first year and they say, "Oh, I'm an official San Diegan now."
So in Miami, it's kind of different. Every conversation is like, "Well, where are you from?" And and I'll say, "Oh, I've lived here for 25 years," and they'll say, "Where before that?" And I'll say, "New York," and they're like, "But where before that?" Because there's so many international people, they're looking for the answer that is, not in the United States. And I say, no, I was
Puerto Rico or Cuba,
right?
or something.
Exactly, Venezuela, Honduras, Brazil, whatever it might be. It's a very international transplant city, and I'll say, no, I'm from here.
Awesome. Well, we are very excited to chat with you today and learn a little bit more about you. When we were looking up the information about you and reading your bio, I was super fascinated by the fact that you are a life coach. How did you make your way into that industry?
So the way I made my way into that is that I was doing some fitness coaching, endurance fitness coaching. I was coaching runners and triathletes, which is my hobby, running and triathlon. More running these days than the triathlon. And I was using life coaches. I had worked with life coaches in the past. And I was inquiring about life coaching because I wanted to get better at helping the athletes I was working with motivation.
Oh, okay.
And so that's what started me on that path. And then I took the plunge for certification because in 2020, the races stopped. And so where the people I had been talking to about their marathons and their triathlons, I was, talking about, intrinsic motivation and external validation. And they had listened to me, but they were more interested in how many miles I should run and how to get faster. And when the races went away, they were very interested in talking to me about motivation and how to feel better about it and how to deal with the process of the races being canceled. And I very quickly realized that while I had some answers from my research and my experience, I didn't actually know how to do that type of coaching because it is very different. And so I was like, okay, then I will take the plunge and learn how to do this style of coaching. And so that's how I got started.
So let's back up for just a second. So working with runners around motivation, I guess I just have this assumption that if you're in the industry, like not in the industry, but if you're into running and you're into races, that you're automatically always motivated. Is that true?
I suppose so. Where it comes up definitely the runs that I was working with people on were like marathons, and you're pretty committed before you even start that process. So there's a piece of that that's definitely true. But what can happen with people who take on big goals, and you see this in all parts of life, when you have a goal and you do everything on your side that can go right, but the circumstances, the environment works against you, right? So if you have the goal to win a race and you show up and there's somebody faster, you do your best, but you don't win, right? So you've met all of your marks, but you don't win. And if you're not set up to deal with that situation, you can be really hard on yourself. So as a coach, those were the kind of situations I would do. If you have trained for a race and you show up and there's 10-mile headwind, or the course was mismatched or misrouted and it's a lot hillier than you thought, maybe you have a time goal that you're really, really invested in and it's not actually possible to get, but you just didn't know it, right? Or you get sick on race day and you can't go, right? You
That's
can't run
horrible.
like
what
your
do you
performance.
do?
Right. Well, yeah, you have to have like the skills. That's where like the motivation coaching comes in, where before the race, we talk about it. We're like, okay, what are your goals and what are the situations they're afraid of? And what are the other things that could happen? And how will you navigate that beforehand so that you're ready for it?
Amy, how is someone actually trained for a marathon? I may know it's, 26 something miles, whatever it is.
26 miles. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you train for that?
Little bit by little bit. You start where you are. So it takes, at least 6 months if you're in pretty good shape, longer if you've got to build up from then. And you just slowly build up so that your body's getting stronger and building more endurance to be able to do that piece by piece. So
you have to run X amount of miles every day or something?
Every day, every other day, you can switch it up. So, you can do, nowadays with the Peloton, everybody's got a Peloton. So it's like you'll run one day and bike the next day.
That's a laundry rack is what that is.
So you switch it up. Maybe you'll run one day, give those muscles a break, right? The next day, do some rowing, go for a walk, go for a swim, do some paddleboarding, ride a bike, and run the next day. And then, build up slowly over a period of time.
But do you actually run the full 26 when you do practice?
Not usually. Some people do, and there are training plans where they will go over. And there are runs that are longer than that. So some people will do it longer than that. But a beginning marathon plan with a first-time marathoner might top out at like 20 or 18 miles. And then on race day, you would push it farther than that and go for the finish.
But if you haven't hit that, if you haven't already done the 26 before, what makes you think you're going to do it on race day?
Well, nobody believes it till they do it. Faith.
Yeah. And, I've wondered about that when I see like marathoners on the Olympics or when I see on Instagram my friends that are running half marathons and full marathons. For me, like I can barely, so I have never been good at running. It's never been a strength of mine. I excel in the water, but like I'll see a runner just like running for fun and I don't get it. Like because I've not experienced it.
Run for fun.
Well, I only run because I'm chased. No, listen, not everybody loves it. So are you a swimmer then?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah. And they don't usually go hand in hand. I got to tell you, like people, that's the group of people who when I talk to them, I love swimming. It's a completely different thing. It's a different animal.
Yeah. And so I guess that's where, when you're talking about motivation, and that's where I struggle because I've always thought, oh, well, all these people are running. Maybe I should try and be a runner. And then when it comes around to motivation, I'm like, I can't even get myself off the couch to think about putting on my tennis shoes to run down the street unless a dog is chasing me. Right. But so I could see how your work would be really important. But do you also cross over into working with individuals? Because you mentioned like fitness coaching. Do you work with individuals that are just trying to like start working out for the first time, or is it more established athletes?
I never did that. And I don't work with athletes anymore. So when I switched over to life coaching, part of that process of going through that certification was that I decided that that was not the type of coaching I wanted to do anymore. So now I don't work with anybody. I just do my own fitness coaching. But so the people I worked with were training to run marathons or Ironman triathlons. So they usually had some fitness under their belt.
Okay. So you mentioned not being in that dimension anymore, and we know that you are working with blended families. What made you decide to take the jump out of working with runners and into the long haul of marathon relationships?
So my lived experience is that I am a stepmom and a mom. And so I had that experience. My stepkids are grown. I've been a stepmom for over 20 years, and my biological kids are 6/7 grown. I've got one in college and one in high school, right?
Okay.
So, and so that was my lived experience. The life coaching process, like the process of certification, this probably won't surprise you, is pretty introspective. And it's kind of there's a piece of it that's a personal journey, right? You're learning these tools, you're practicing them on other people, you're thinking about how they apply to yourself. Mm-hmm. And so through that process, I realized that I really enjoyed doing that. And you have to do, or I think that all programs are like this. The one that I did, you have to do a certain number of hours with other people to demonstrate that you have some skills and do some supervised coaching and all of the things like that. And so I made a decision to just find total strangers to do that, not to use any of my fitness clients for that practice stuff. When I look back at that decision, it was probably a little bit about the fact that I was testing out the waters for, do I want to do a different type of coaching?
Right.
And like I couldn't have verbalized that at the beginning though, I will admit. And so I just made the decision. I was like, you know what? I think that I can make a bigger difference here. I think that I'd like to do more of this. And I took the plunge.
That's so interesting. So you mentioned being a step parent for 20 years, but not being a life coach until more recently.
Yes.
So, we're very transparent about the fact that we have a blended family, that we came to this both with children, Kris and I, with children from previous relationships. And so when you think back to, 20 plus years ago, when you first became a step parent, what was that transition into having stepchildren like for you?
Well, I'm glad you asked. So I freely admit that I went into this with rose-colored glasses on, thinking I had it all, thinking everything would be fine. I didn't think that I had it all figured out. I just figured I could figure it out. How hard could it be? And was, pretty surprised by how hard it actually was once I got into it. And so I didn't have my own kids when I became a stepmom. So it was partial custody where sometimes the kids were not here and other times they were. And, I loved my husband and I really liked the kids. I thought they were adorable and cute. But living with kids full time is a lot different than, seeing them for a few hours every few days.
How old were these kids, Amy, when you first met
4 and 8.
Oh, okay.
So 4 and 8. So they were pretty young. And so, but living with people is hard. Living with small people is hard.
Oh, yeah.
It was hard. So what I tell people, I say, I did not know what I was doing and I had to figure it out as I went along. And one of the challenges I think of blending a family or stepping into a family where there's already children where you may not have them is that it is a rapid transition. One day you are living in a house with no children or your own children. And, you think about it and you talk about it and you plan it. But there comes a day where all of a sudden you are living together, whether it's for, half the week or a whole week. And it's a rapid transition. It's different than I think a lot of people expect. That's one of the reasons I think it can be hard in the beginning.
Yeah, it definitely can. And so, I had that experience. So my son lives during the week with his father about 300 miles away from us. So I was the one that moved into the household with Kris and his 2 boys that were with us 50% of the time. And so, one of the things that I've always wondered about is did you experience feelings of, I don't want to say being left out, but almost like trying to figure out what your place was because they already had an established little family unit?
So it's interesting the way you phrase that because you've been through it. The answer is yes, absolutely. And at the time, I felt like I was being excluded or I felt like an outsider. Looking back, what I think was really going on was exactly like you were saying. They had established routines and I kind of call it a secret culture, but they didn't know it was secret. Right? They just had routines and things and habits that they all did together that they all knew and I didn't know, right? Like the seat on the couch, or we watch this show and that show, or we eat these things on this way, or this is my favorite food. All of those things that they had established that they knew. And so they were just being themselves. And not even actually trying to exclude me, probably just, kids are generally sort of very self-absorbed.
Yeah, they're kind of like a little shy too. I mean, when our kids first met Kristine, wasn't it amazing? Like, or Jacob poking her head around the corner of the door, like, who is this stranger that Dad brought home?
Right. Yeah. And so I definitely did. I felt like I didn't know what was going on. And I felt like there was a rhythm I didn't understand. And my husband and I talked about it a lot, like at the time. It took a long time for us to figure out like our way through that. And by a long time, I mean probably months and so on and so forth. And he didn't realize that I was waiting to be invited into some of these moments. He thought that I should just sort of assume that I should be included. And from his side, he was trying to honor the fact that maybe I didn't want to do everything with the kids. Like maybe I didn't want to watch 4 hours of Blue's Clues, which would have been true.
Oh,
right?
Come on now. It was fun.
Right? And, so he was trying to like honor my space. And on the other hand, sometimes I was feeling pushed out and not included and did not know how to ask to be included. And so that was the process from our side. So I definitely felt that way in a variety of ways, in a variety of situations. And we would learn our way through it.
Amy,
but it is a place where I wish that people had more support, honestly.
Well, like should you guys kind of discuss these things prior when you're dating the person before you bring the, hey, I've got kids and here they are. Here are some things we do, maybe like a little background? Sure.
I mean, the way I describe it is because I don't think they know. I don't think that people know their secret routines. Like, so the way I sort of explain it is like we all grow up in houses with our families, and we have a culture of our family, and we think that these things are normal to us, and we assume that every other house in the world is probably like ours, right? So, for example, my family was quiet. And during the night, we did not, you open doors quietly and you close them quietly. You would never flush a toilet in the middle of the night in my house growing up because it would wake the other light sleepers up. My husband's family is loud. They do not have this rule, you guys. Open doors, close doors, unload the dishwasher in the middle of the night, clanging things around. I'm like, what is up with this?
Clanging and banging.
What is up with this? Like, why do you behave like this in the middle of the night? But he doesn't know. He doesn't realize it's unusual. He looks at me like I'm an alien when I'm like, what are you talking about? Yeah, I'm unloading the dishwasher, right? And so the adjustment to like a person stepping into an established family is similar. It's like being a house guest, except it's your own house.
Yeah. You know what? That's so interesting that you mentioned that. Kris and I had conversations. So we recently, just over a year ago, bought a house finally together. We've been married now just over 2 years, and we lived together for a year prior to, once we were engaged, we lived together for a year before we got married. But I remember when we were in the old house that Kris had bought by himself as a bachelor, with his 2 boys.
Bachelor? It's because like it was a bachelor pad or something.
As a single
dad. Did you have a black leather couch? Because it's a rule.
Yeah, just to mind the white stains on the...
Big TV, leather couch.
No, I had nothing leather at all. I couldn't afford that.
But he had the big TV. He had the picture of the caricature of the bartender dealing a martini.
That's my favorite picture.
Yeah. But when I came in and there were certain things that were kept a certain way, and after we got married, that was a conversation where I still sometimes felt like I was a house guest, even though I was paying the mortgage. Like it just didn't feel right. And so for us, it was a big step forward for us to buy something together that was uniquely ours, but not everybody has that opportunity. And so figuring out like how to help yourself feel comfortable when you are coming into a family unit that might have been more established and you're trying to not push your way in because you've been invited in, but sometimes it does feel like you're pushing your way in or like having to make room for yourself because maybe the others aren't equipped with the skills to help you feel welcomed into that little group.
Right. And so you guys bought a house, which is a great way to do it. I think that other people do it by redecorating or moving things around or creating new traditions and shaking it out. I think that some of it, just like you said, people don't have the skills or the knowledge or the awareness. And we think that they do, but they don't. And then probably we shouldn't have the expectation that they would, right?
Right.
This is a place where it's helpful to have people sort of step us through it. And so in my case, it was, when I said to my husband, I said, I feel like you should invite me. And he said, I think you should just assume that you're invited. That was us realizing that we were not at all on the same page.
Oh, yeah.
And so that was the beginning of that process. And this was a long time ago. And truthfully, I was not taking notes like, hey, I'm going to teach people how to do this 20 years from now. So I remember the high points, but not necessarily all the details sometimes. But one of the things that I remember which was really interesting, we moved my husband's bachelor apartment couches into our first house. They were green, not black, but it still fits the mold, right?
Right.
And they were small. And one of the things that I really struggled with was I felt like when we were all around, we didn't all fit on the couch. And so I felt squeezed out, like literally squeezed out by, it was him and the kids on the couch.
Oh.
And when it came, and at first we went round and round, like, well, why do you feel that way? And make space and so on and so forth. And then one day, not because of this, but because, the couches were too small or whatever, we bought different couches that were bigger and it went away.
Right.
Didn't we do the same thing, Kristine?
Yeah. It's so funny that you're mentioning this, Amy, because when Kris and I started to get really serious and talked about moving in together, and he had this couch, it wasn't the leather couch, but it was one of those where both sides of it are a recliner and the middle is just
and the middle has like the, yeah.
Well, there was like a cushion in the middle, but you could literally fit only 3 people, but we were becoming a family of 5. And so
But I had those other chairs I would bring in. If I watched,
you would bring them in, though.
Yes, it was like.
But there's and there's a good spot on the couch.
Right?
Like there were the good spots.
Right, exactly. And so we went to the furniture place with all 3 boys, and part of the test for the couch was we all 5 had to sit on there and feel like sitting as if we were watching a movie together so that everybody was comfortable. And that was the kicker. Like once we found the couch, because the way that the old living room was, there wasn't room for another couch. It was just an odd shape. And so for me, because we would have the same exact experience, like they'd put on a movie and there'd be room for the three of them. And then I just go sit in the front sitting room on one of the other chairs by myself in the dark because there's not room for me and I'm not going to push my way in. So,
right.
Yeah.
And they don't know that they figure you don't want to watch the movie.
Right. And I'm sitting over there pouting like, I just wish that, yes, totally.
Oh my God. Somebody is going to listen to this and they're going to say, that's what's happening in my house. And they're going to walk in and they're going to be, you know what we need to do? We need to buy a bigger couch.
Yeah, I'll put links to all the local furniture places in the show notes.
Definitely.
But it's the same. It's very similar to like, it's the process of creating your own space for the new family, the new unit.
Right.
And, the same thing happens with traditions over time. It changes a little bit. And I use the words honor and respect. It's like honoring and respecting what came before, and then sort of creating new if it needs to be created new, or
Absolutely.
just including people in. Yeah
I think that for us, one of the biggest changes that we've made is around the holidays. I know that for blended families, especially if they have shared custody with other parents, and just coming out of this, we kind of have it fresh top of mind, but it's really challenging at times to figure out scheduling Thanksgiving and Christmas and building your own tradition. So
very hard.
When you start working with families or couples that are navigating this journey of blending, what do you do to help mentally prepare them for the emotions that come up around the deciding who goes where, as well as the how we create new for ourselves?
That's wow. How much time do we have? Gosh.
We got all day, Amy.
All day. Okay. So, every family is different, right? And so you start by looking at what's going on. And one of the things that I do with people when at the very, very beginning is I try and get an entire picture of all the people who are involved. Because especially with the families, all of the people are involved. Families, holidays are complicated even when it's not a blended family, because you've got aunts and uncles and grandparents and all those things, right? And then if you add in different combinations of this, and maybe people who are distanced, right? Like some people don't live in the same state or different parts of the city.
Right.
It gets really complicated. And your kids are probably young, but when the kids are teenagers and they have friends and they really actually don't want to hang out with you very often, that also gets complicated.
No.
And when they get married and there's in-laws, that's another level of complication, right? So you sort of start by putting all of the, pieces on the table and figuring out who's there. And then what are the different things? Like what happened before? What was the old thing? What are the agreements? Like what are the official agreements? Because that is different from every single family. Some people have very tight rules and they're in a very high conflict sort of thing. So it's like, these are the rules. And if we step outside it, back to court. And other people have very fluid arrangements. And so you've got this is the rules, this is what we used to do. And then it's taking some time to look at what is it that you want? Like, what are the things of this that you really enjoy? What are the parts of it that you love? What are the parts of it that you didn't like? What would you like to do? And figuring out what pieces of that you can create in different ways. And the reason I lay it out like that is that sometimes we will be tempted to hold on to things that we used to have, even if we hate them.
Right.
Because we used to have them.
That's just what it always was, right? You're just like,
that's the way it always was. And, how many people do you think make a turkey on Thanksgiving that don't actually like turkey?
Yep. That's a good point.
I mean, it's like the funniest thing. And so, and there's, as long, if it doesn't bother you and it's not causing a problem, then that's totally, I do not judge. But in this case where you're looking at what can I do and what will make me happy, then that is where this is the time where it's like, okay, this is this. And then there are other tools that go in, and it's different for every person. So some people will look to do holiday celebrations with their kids on different days. Like they will say, okay, I'm going to have a celebration on a different day because the celebration is important to me, not necessarily the day of the holiday.
Yeah, we've done that here.
Yeah. Other people don't like that. Other people, it drives them bananas. So, that doesn't work for everybody. And it's going to change from year to year. So my stepkids are grown. When one of them was a teenager, I remember we were having Thanksgiving, and my stepdaughter kept calling, and she was like, "Well, what time are you doing dinner? And what are you serving? And can we move it a little bit?" And this was going on for a couple of days. And hey, can we move it again? And hey, would you mind if we came over at this time? And finally, I said, "Hey, wait a minute, time out. Why do you keep asking me to move this?" And it turned out that she was going to try and go to 4 separate family dinners. And try and eat at all of them. And I said, listen, take us off the list. Like, come over whenever you come over. We're going to be here. Spend some time with us, but please don't let this meal pressure you into trying to do too much, right? Like, we will just spend whatever time you have. And she was like, yeah, but I really want this and that. And I was like, I will make you a plate. We will do another dinner, right? And so it's the balance of opening up the communication, figuring out what's important, and then I don't want to be like all rainbows and unicorns here. Right. There definitely are times where piece of this is acknowledging that it's hard and we don't always get what we want. And the life coach in me just wants to throw in there, that's not necessarily just because it's a blended family. That happens in all kind of families. You can have a dream, family get together, and half the family gets stuck because Southwest canceled their reservations. Oh, right?
Yeah, yep.
Right. So it's the only thing I offer is like, don't just beat yourself up thinking it's because of your family construct. It just is like, this is what's going on this year, and how can we enjoy it?
Absolutely. That's really good advice. And I want to kind of build off of that. You'd mentioned thinking that our kiddos are young. Actually, our oldest is turning 18 next week. Our middle,
I was wrong.
Yeah, our middle is turning 13 next week.
They're still young to us, you know.
So my son, my biological son, is turning 18. And then the next day, Chris's oldest, my stepson, turns 13. They have back-to-back birthdays, and then our littlest is 10. And so we're in that stage of like for the little ones, because they're with us 50% of the time, the tween stage. And so I was wondering, because I know it's something that a lot of step parents encounter, is the like, you're not my mom, or my mom said I have to do this whenever.
Or my mom lets me do it this way.
Right. Or
I bet she does.
Or my dad, and not picking on the kids, because this isn't about them. This is about they're trying to navigate something. But as a parent, I will tell you, I'm really stuck because it's like the fight or flight response. It's like my amygdala gets fired up, and they're like, well, my mom said, and I'm like, everything in me wants to be like, do I look like your mom? Probably not the right thing to say in that moment.
Do you want to give me an example of a time that triggered it so that I speak on context?
Okay.
Oh, so you got plenty. Which one?
No, well, and again, being delicate about the situation. So we've been navigating some challenges in terms of screen time access because of getting into trouble at school. And not just about grades. And so we are a united front across both households around the restrictions. But when one house is ready to lift the restrictions, and we are the ones that pay the bills, and we're not ready to lift the restrictions, is when it comes into a clash. Even though we've communicated, you're not getting your screen time limits increased because this is the new way that things are going to be around here. But my mom said I'm not in trouble anymore. That's the scenario.
So do you guys have good communication with the mom? Like, is it clean communication? Okay.
Yeah, for the
most part. I mean, we get once in a while kind of get our feathers ruffled, but for the most part, we communicate pretty actively.
It was like a mind-blowing experience for my stepkids when they realized that we talked to their mom. And they, because it never feels good, right? So it never feels good to have somebody say, hey, you're not my mom. Or if you're not a blended family, the line is, you don't get to tell me what to do, right? So keeping in mind that in adolescence, they are asserting their independence, right? They're pulling away. They do not want to be told what to do, although they don't know how to do anything yet. The 18-year-old really probably does know a lot of the stuff that they can do. But at 13 and 10, They think they know all the answers, and we know they don't quite yet, right? And they really do want their phones. This is a hot topic item, right? They really do want their screen time, and taking it away from them is like,
it's like death.
Right. I mean, you got to be ready for a war.
Right.
You really got to be ready to fight about it. And so, that's the reality. The reality of the situation, similar to trying to take away a car from somebody who can drive. Like, that's a big privilege for these kids to lose. But if you guys are united between the houses on the restriction and the kid calls you on it, one thing you could try and do is be like, you know what? All right, I can check with your mom. And call them on it. Be like, all right, I can check with your mom. She and I can have that discussion. I didn't know that. And this is not a rule that is mom or stepmom. This is a family rule.
Right.
So that's the logistic, cross-parenting thing. The separate issue of the feeling you get when somebody calls you on, you're not my mom. That's like that there's some internal stuff that you can think about there. Like, why would it matter that I'm his mom? Like, I could be saying this to you and be, Trudy from down the street, and so that is doing some searching for like, why does it bother you that they are saying you're not your mom? And you want to get to the point where you're just like, yeah, and moving on, right? This is not a mom thing. This is, I am your stepmom. I get to make these rules.
I think for individuals, well, I'll just talk for myself. I'm not going to cast a broad net and pretend like I'm speaking for others. But for me, when I get that statement of, but my mom said, and it's their time with us, I think for me, you're going to have to put your life coaching hat on.
Absolutely.
Is for me, as you were talking, it triggers an insecurity back to, do I really belong in this family? Am I really, do they really love me back? And I think that's really hard to wrestle with because kids are just being kids. But for me, it hits something deep inside where it's like, but I'm with you more than I get to be with my own son because he lives out of the area. Like, why would you say mean things? And so I think that's just kind of, I don't know if other people feel like that, but it definitely hits a nerve.
Yeah. I mean, people do have different reasons that it triggers them, but I think that that's a common one. Like, there is a perception that if you were the biological parent, you wouldn't get questioned as much.
Right.
But I would ask you if your 18-year-old challenges your authority sometimes.
Yes. Oh, he challenges me all the time.
Well, he challenges me to a certain extent, but not like he does to my husband.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. But he does challenge you. So being the biological parent doesn't mean that you're not going to get challenged by the kids, right? So it's a facet of being a caregiver, but you have kids and you know that. So that's not it. But the insecurity of, do I belong and am I loved? Then you would go through, what does love feel like? Like, how do we demonstrate that you are loved and safe in this house?
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah,
probably not for public consumption on the podcast. The answer, I'm just going to cut that short. Like, those are questions for you to think about. Like, what am I looking for here? And why is this triggering it? And the tool there is that once you get a couple of things that give you that feeling of love and security, you can foster that and it balances out the triggers that come and make you doubt it. And you can also pick up on the things that are causing you to doubt it. And with any luck, if you live in utopia, when the kid says, you know what? You're not my mom says I can use my phone all the time. You would then have the flash where you're like, oh, that's that thing that drives me crazy that he says, but I know that it's just him trying to get his phone, right? This is not actually about me. And you would remind yourself and be like, okay, I get it that you want your phone, and not feel like he was attacking you, even though he is attacking you because he wants his phone and it's connected to his internal being.
And does that statement of the you're not my mom, or that deferring off to the parent that's not present, does that trigger a feeling of a loss of control for the step parent, where they feel like they might be losing control of that specific situation? Because I think that could be part of it for me too.
Yeah, sometimes it's control. Sometimes it's a reminder of something they wish they had. So if you have a child-free stepmom who maybe doesn't have kids, they might have an underlying thing like, oh, I'm not enough because I don't have my own kids. And so that's something that can come up. And there's other things that probably come up also. But there's, because there's the thing that's happening, the kid who says this, and then there's the cascade of thoughts that happens inside us that creates our reaction. And they actually are two totally different things, right? It's pretty rare. I mean, when a kid screams at you, "You're not my mom, you don't get to tell me what to do." They're being little twerps and they're not being nice and they want a reaction, but they're children and they don't really, unless there's, something super unusual, they're not really trying to hurt you so much as they are trying to get what they think they want. And they don't have any tools other than that to do it.
So, Amy, overall, what would you think would be the toughest part about being a step parent?
Oh my gosh. So I think that the toughest thing for us was communication and time balance across the houses in the beginning, right? Getting the big, giant family schedule organized. My husband may have a diagnosed disability of inability to put anything on the calendar, which definitely
What's a calendar? You just tell me the day of. I'm good.
Definitely made it more complicated. But that was definitely a big challenge. The communication and finding, the identity challenge was there. Who am I in this family, and what is my role, and what is my responsibility? Where do I fit in this pie?
Yeah, I think that definitely hits the nail on the head for me. And so currently, what types of resources do you put together or do you have available for step parents and blended families that they can look to?
So I have a couple of on-demand available small resources on my website. So I have a list of the 10 lessons I learned in the 20 years of being a stepmom, and I have the 7 action steps that I think are the actions that we took that moved us through from those lessons. So those are 2 fast resources that I have available for people. I also have a little quiz that people can take to try and figure out what is setting off the imbalance in their family, which is just a fun way to figure out, what's the problem? Is it really the high conflict X, or is there something else going on? And so I do one-on-one coaching with people. That's the number one way that I work with folks. And then this year I'm creating resources that'll be on demand so that at 3:00 in the morning, you can log onto the website and be like, "Help me fix my problems." And there'll be something available to buy.
I would totally have taken advantage of that in those early days, because there were times when I was up in the middle of the night or after some situation, and I was Googling, resources for step parenting and navigating co-parenting. And because for me, I went from having an only child and then being a single mom for a series of years to now being a mom of multiples, because I'd never had more than one child in the household. So it's the dividing attention as well as, managing the different personalities. And gosh, it's a learning curve no matter where you're at in the stage. And like you said, going into this with rose-colored glasses, I think I was definitely very guilty of that too.
Well, I think speaking of the rose-colored glasses, is one thing that I always appreciate about our kids is that they really gravitated to each other pretty early on to be best buddies.
Right.
Your kid and my kids, they're like best friends. They're always calling each other, talking all the time. I think when Ezekiel comes here to town,
lucky.
Yeah, definitely.
When he comes into town, the other 2, they're excited to go to the airport, pick him up. They're excited to go be with him. All 3 of them, like 3 amigos, they're all running around the house, playing games outside, whatever. They're having a blast. But sometimes, they do have moments where they can argue and it can get ugly a few times. For the most part, they're pretty cordial to each other, I think.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah. No, but that is a big adjustment to go from 1 to 3. Yeah. I mean, and they weren't, how old were they when you came on the scene? Just a couple of years younger than they are now.
Yeah. So Kris and I have been together for almost 5 years now. So the littlest one was just in kindergarten.
So 5 and 8.
He just turned 5, just turned 6, something right around there. Mm-hmm.
So when you think about why is it hard to make that adjustment, right? If you guys had come together and had 3 kids together, right, there would have been separation. And that you both have had young kids. There's that part where a new baby is around where they don't do anything.
Right.
You know, it's like you've got the time of pregnancy and then there's that newborn phase where they sleep all the time. And it's a long time. It's 5 years before they get to 5 years old.
Right.
You know, so, and you jumped in and you had a tween and then there were two children, active children running around, yelling, doing the things, having places to go. It's a massively rapid transition and it's not something that people can't do. But one of the challenges, I think, of being a step parent, I don't know if you experienced this, is that I didn't know who to talk to. Like,
right.
I did not know, because I don't know if you guys were how much you guys were able to talk to each other, but it did not go well if I looked at my husband, I was like, yeah, I don't really want to hang out with your kids today. Like,
yeah,
that's not a nice thing to say to their parents. And so finding that support network or somebody who you can talk to is a challenge. And so that's one of the reasons I want to speak up as much as I do, to sort of offer that as the more safe spaces that people in blended families have to speak up and say, oh, is this normal? Like, is it okay? Like, how do I get through this? I think the better off we'll all be.
I agree. And it seems like, even though there's the statistic of, 50% of marriages fail, there's a whole lot of people out there that have been divorced or gone through a fractured relationship that may be getting into a situation of being a blended family. But for some reason, it's just not talked about very much. There's not a lot of resources. And when I was divorced and then, I don't want to say on the prowl, but, back out dating.
And then she hit me up. She sought me out. She did.
It was, when I got into that space of, us talking about becoming a blended family and consciously making that decision to step forward into that, I was the only one in all of my friend group that, first of all, that had a kid, because I was still reasonably young. Like, I had him when I was 23, and all of my friends that are young professionals are just, now getting married or just now having kids. So getting married and having a kid, let alone having been divorced and remarried, there's not a lot of us around that feel like we have that support system, and then amplify that with getting married in the middle of a pandemic. And it feels even more isolating. So I imagine that there are a number of families that have come together or are thinking of coming together that have gone through this period of the pandemic that are looking for help. And I think that your support is super timely. So, Amy, where can our listeners find out more about you, your coaching services, and your newly launched podcast?
So my name is Amy Stone. And I very cleverly call my business Amy Says So.
Oh, I love that.
Nice.
So the website is amysaysso.com. And that is really the best place to find the things that I'm doing and sign up for the resources. I do have profiles on social media, and they will hopefully funnel you to the website where I do a better job of keeping things updated and all in one place. And the podcast is called The Amy Says So Show. And so it is just out at the beginning of 2023 and is making its way through all of the magic of the podcast playing services and should be available everywhere you listen to podcasts.
Fantastic, as we enter 2023 right now.
Yeah. So
did I say the right year? Did I say 2023?
I think so.
Yes, you did.
Yeah. It's so new in the year. I could have said 2022.
Yeah. So listeners, if you are a blended family, if you have a friend or a family member who is embarking on this journey of becoming a blended family, or you have a friend that just needs some resources and support, please make sure to share this episode with them. Amy, I appreciate so much of what you said. When you heard me pause a little bit earlier, I was composing myself because you hit I felt so validated when we were talking through everything. And so I've gotten a lot out of this episode. I know our listeners will, and especially with your resources. We would just want to thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you very much for having me as a guest. I appreciate it.
Are you in the middle of wedding planning and feeling overwhelmed? There's no need to fret, my friend. Kristine Smith Designs is here to rescue you. Offering wedding planning, coordination, and wedding floral design services, let us help relieve your stress and make your wedding day dreams a reality. Visit us at KristineSmithDesigns.com. That's KRISTINE SmithDesigns.com and request a free consultation. You'll be so glad you did.
This was great having Amy on the show today. She had so much good advice.
Yeah, absolutely. I got so much out of what she was sharing and got choked up a couple times there just reflecting on our journey.
I know, because we do put a lot into the podcast. We're very, very honest on this show, and I think it does shine through at moments like that, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I know that Amy gave a lot of tips and resources, and you're going to put those in the show notes, right, Kris?
Yeah, I'll put the tips and resources into the show notes. Everything she has, I will drop into the show notes of this episode. So you just go ahead and look down below, and there they are.
Absolutely. We thank you so much, everybody, for letting us be vulnerable and listening to this show. And we hope that you got something out of it. If people want to learn more about us, Kris, where can they find us?
You can go to our master website, which is krisandkristineshow.com.
Absolutely. And there's lots of resources on there, including links to Podtastic Audio, as well as Christine Smith Designs, my business. And you can learn a bit more about our blended family journey following our vacation videos that you have on the website, right, Kris?
Oh, yeah. I'm going to put more up when we go to Hawaii later this year.
Absolutely. So thank you, everybody, so much for listening. And we'll be back with you next week.